What is the most OP build for Annette in Fire Emblem Three Hopes? Well, I can tell you one thing. That Crusher weapon of hers is amazing on her. So with that being said, it only makes sense to run an axe-wielding class. Out of Great Knight and Wyvern Lord, I feel like there's a very clear winner here, for a lot of reasons. Annette's best class is Wyvern Lord. With that being said, I'll explain my reasoning as we go as per usual. I present to you Hammer Slammer Annette. There's actually a second build I designed for Annette, purely around being support or an adjutant for other units. She actually makes the best adjutant in the entire game. If you want to see that build, let's get to 500 likes so I know there's a demand for it. As I mentioned before, our weapon is going to be the Crusher. The Crusher comes with two really cool abilities. Wit Strike makes it so all of your damage calculation is based on your magic stat. Without this, Annette would be hitting enemies like a wet noodle. Stagger is another welcomed ability since it periodically produces the stun gauge when we're attacking normally. For our accessory, you have a few options. You could run the Aurora Shield for the flying weakness coverage. And if you didn't want to use your one Aurora Shield for this build, feel free to just use a crit ring. The reason I have Crusher Dragon Sign equipped is because I was trying to test out if I used double crest, would it enhance the Crusher weapon, and to no prevail, it seems as though it doesn't do anything. Our battalion of choice is to resist armored units. As far as damage goes, armored units will give us the hardest time overall, so this weakness is fairly important. For our combat abilities, we're running both Smash and Crush. You're gonna understand why these two abilities later into the build, but the short of it is, Smash gives us a really high crit chance ability that hits often, and Crush is an ice ability that freezes enemy that also hits often. This is what gives Annette the name Hammer Slammer. Annette has three unique abilities, first of which is Courageous Aria. This ability has a fill gauge that gets moderately filled when we attack. When full, you can activate it to temporarily strengthen yourself and your surrounding allies. So what does this mean exactly? Well, I've seen three different effects come out of this ability. There may be more, but I've only noticed the three. The first effect is it will imbue you with the power of wind, effectively making your damage apply the wind status effect. The second effect is a huge boost to crit. Honestly, during this effect you're gonna crit like 95% of the time. And the third effect is speed boost. Much like Ferdinand or Felix, when I say speed boost, I am not referring to the speed stat. I am referring to the attack speed and move speed of the unit. This is a very strong ability. Its only downside is the fact that you can't choose which effect you want. Annette's second ability is called Overachiever. This ability activates when using a warrior special and successfully defeating 30 or more enemies. Doing so gives us a large increase in damage for a limited time. Ray of Sunshine increases damage dealt to enemies by 50% when ordered to defend. And as for our class abilities, we got Grievous Blow, which increases our crit hit damage, and Lance Buster to boost our damage against lances by 95%. Grievous Blow stacks with our Smash combat art that already has a high crit chance, increasing the damage of this ability by a lot. But even further than that, it stacks with our Courageous Aria ability, effectively increasing our damage by a huge amount. This is one of the biggest reasons you don't want to use other classes on Annette for the sake of her full potential. Now moving on to her abilities, as per usual I'll show you all the unlocks at the end of the video. Axe Prowess increases our damage by 30% when wielding an axe. Wild Abandon greatly increases our damage done, but also greatly increases our damage received. Offensive Tactics increases our damage by 20% as long as our battalion is still active. Boost Critical boosts our crit hit chance even further. I'm sure by now you're noticing the trend. Heaviest Hitter causes all of our strong attacks to produce the stun gauge on enemies at a high rate. This ability is not to be confused with Heavy Hitter, which is a worse version of this ability. Wyvern Rider's Wisdom increases damage to enemy stun gauges when using our class actions. Keep in mind that our weapon also gives us a chance of proccing the stun gauge when we attack, so not only is Annette stacked with crit, but we're stacked with stun gauge abilities too. Burst of Resolve increases our awakening gauge with each critical hit, which is the true reason behind using Smash. That one combat art boosts our awakening gauge tenfold, but there's more to it than that. We're also running Crush, which hits a huge number of times. So when Courageous Aria activates our crit chance increase, we're boosting our awakening gauge by an insane amount. Driven Spirit increases our warrior gauge fill rate while awakened. Luna decreases the enemy's defense proportionate to our luck stat, which is another really strong ability, and finally we're running Battle Instincts. This ability increases the fill rate of both the Warrior and Awakening gauge until one of them is completely full. Our main stat for the build are Magic, Dex, and Speed. Out of the three, Magic is the most important since, remember, all of our damage is based on that stat. We also have the added bonus of being able to swap to a Mage class on a whim without having to redo our stats. You want to level Annette as 2 classes to get the best stats possible. You're going to want to level her 80 times as a Grimoire, which should put her Magic stat 10 stats or so below the max, and you should level her 10 levels at a time and keep an eye on your Magic stat. If your Magic stat goes above 100 at any point before those 80 levels, you're going to want to swap over to Trickster and put the rest of your levels there. Annette has a high growth rate for Magic naturally, so when boosted by Grimoire's Magic boost as well, you're going to get close to max really quickly. And we don't want you to hit max, otherwise we're wasting stats. You want to land a couple points shy right as you hit level 120. Grimoire is going to boost your Magic like crazy as well as a small boost to your Dex, while Trickster gives you a huge boost to your speed and a pretty large boost to your Dex as well. Your Magic stat is what decides your damage in this build. Your speed stat determines how long you stay awakened for when you activate it, as well as how long our cooldowns are on our combat arts. Dex increases our crit chance as well as boosting our critical rush damage, which is just as important as the other stats. Since Annette has so much potential, this is another stat boost recommendation from me. Max her Magic and her Dex with stat boosters to really get Annette to kick into overdrive. Your speed is important too, but less so than the other two. Annette is a monster. You want to fly into battle and start each encounter with your Crush combat art. This will do a bunch of damage and freeze the enemy. Follow up with Smash while the enemy is stuck in place and can't move. This leads us to our final reasoning for running these abilities. Keep an eye on your Courageous Aria ability. You're going to notice when you use either Crush or Smash, this bar charges crazy quickly. So once that bar is full, you use your character special to buff yourself and nearby enemies. This will excel your combat in one way or the other. If you get the crit boost, you're going to start maxing your Awakening gauge super fast. If you get speed, then you have the ability to break stun gauges super fast. And if you get wind, then your damage will start to increase every time you use your combat arts and hit enemies into the air. By the time you finish activating your Crush and Smash ability one more time, your Courageous Aria ability should be ready to activate again. You should be able to activate this ability like 10 or 20 times in battle, no problem. As far as our Warrior specials and Awakening is concerned, it's the same as usual. Throw out your Warrior specials till you run out before activating your Awakening gauge. Then just do more of what we're already doing, but now better because you're awakened. Once you run out of steam, activate your Warrior specials some more on top of Aria to build towards your next Awakening. Now let's talk where I got all these abilities. Axe Prowess is from Fighter, Armored Knight, and Warrior. Wild Abandon from Brigand. Offensive Tactics from Wyvern Rider. Boost Critical from Warlock. Heaviest Hitter from Wyvern Lord, not to be confused by a Heavy Hitter. Wyvern Rider's Wisdom from Wyvern Rider. Burst of Resolve is from Trickster. Driven Spirit from Dark Knight. Luna from Great Knight. Battle Instincts from Bow Knight. Smash from Fighter, and Crush from Wyvern Rider. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more builds.